Hey, my loves, this is your girl, Goddess L here on my first edition of High Connection Presents Moments in Hip Hop. I wanted to find a way for me to be able to express my love for hip hop and music. Without music and without hip hop, there would not be a Goddess L. I grew up listening to all the artists that my dad used to listen to, from the old school R&B to hip hop. And that's when I fell in love with who I call my hip hop dad, Tupac. Um, he reminded me a lot of me. I know that's crazy to say, but he was an all around dope individual, not from just the lyricist to the music, but he was an artist. He was an actor, a poet, and an activist. Everything that I inspire in, everything that I am. And can't nothing take that away from everything that I've learned. I've learned that it was okay to be angry, but I also learned how to be able to deal with those emotions so I won't harm myself or cause this disaster or chaos for anyone else. And that's another reason why I love hip hop and I decided to create this show. On this first episode of High Connections Presents Moments in Hip Hop, I came together with a couple of different individuals, from mentors, OGs, and up and coming artists. From my hometown, from Chicago, and a whole bunch of different other places.
Back down memory lane with Goddess L. Interview questions. What is your favorite decade in hip hop? Name a few of your favorite artists in that time, and share a story from a decade you'll never forget.
One of my favorite moments in hip hop had to be being young and seeing Tupac's face on TV. I'm like, that's the moment that everything in my life changed. I knew it was possible with anything that I wanted to be. And I made sure I made a way that I could be myself and unapologetically, you know, not caring about who liked me, who liked the things that I've done, my music, my work, just knowing that there are other people out there like me. And I'm going to make sure that those people be able to understand and know that it's okay to be different. And it's okay to love the things that you do that other people don't, because it's your life and you have to live it. No one else can make those choices for you. And that's another reason why I love hip hop. You guys stay tuned and take a listen to some of my mentors, OGs, legends, and up and coming artists' love for music and different moments that they experience in this time as well. Thank you for being a part of Moments in Hip Hop. This is your girl, Goddess L here. Stay tuned.
Yo, what's going on? It's your boy KB Tyndall, man. Host of The Essence, owner of Tent TV. Um, let's see. My favorite decade in hip hop would probably have to be the '90s. I mean, the '80s was dope. Don't get me wrong, because it was like the beginning and the start of everything. But the '90s, man, and some of my favorite artists out of that generation are, it's so many, man, that I can't even really narrow it down, but I'll just go with like Nas, Hov, and Big, because those are the main characters. You know what I mean, that everybody goes with. But there's so many lyricists from that time period and that era and that generation that it's insane, man. And for me, one of my most memorable stories would probably be when I interviewed Outkast in Atlanta on the set of the So Fresh and So Clean video for a magazine that I used to write for back in the days. Yeah, it was one of those dope ass interviews, man. It was everything that you expected from an artist. Dre was definitely hospitable. So was Big Boy. And after the end of the interview, they even told us where to go eat and get some really good seafood at. You know what I mean? So it was a dope experience, man. So that's my take on it.
What up? It's your boy Solo Redline. My girl asked me to give her my favorite decade in hip hop. My favorite decade in hip hop, I would have to say, is definitely the 90s. My favorite artists around that time was Tupac, Biggie, and probably Bone Thugs. Those were the artists that was, cracking at that time. Scarface, I probably got more than 3, but the main thing that I was into at that time in that era was, it seemed like we stood for something. Hip hop really meant something. You had the Rodney King beating, and you had all the hip hop artists that stood up for it and was against, police brutality, and they really meant it. It wasn't no social media thing, because social media wasn't a thing at the time.
Yo, my name is Artistic. I am a graffiti artist, b-boy, former DJ, and former MC. But I still got it all, the love of it in my heart. I represent all the elements, from fashion to the vocabulary, and just representing hip hop universally. I'm from Chicago, born and raised. I've been rocking in this game. Started off as a b-boy in 1982, and here it is 2022, and I'm still doing it. Currently, I am doing several archiving projects, but keeping it alive, keeping hip-hop alive. My favorite decade of hip-hop will always be the 80s. Peace out to all the pioneers in New York that started in the 70s, some in the late 60s. But for me, the 80s is what was my favorite. That's when I started, and that's when hip-hop really, really, really went internationally in the 1980s. There were a lot of groups that came out back in the 80s, specifically from New York and other parts of the East Coast. Some of my favorite groups or favorite artists during that time was Run DMC and Jam Master Jay, my homeboy, who is now deceased. Peace out to Jam Master Jay. I liked other artists like KRS-One, Rakim, my man LL Cool J, MC Shan, and some of the female artists that I liked was Queen Latifah, MC Light, of course Salt and Pepper, and Roxanne Shante. Yeah, so they represented the East Coast. But some of the artists that I like from Chicago, representing right here in the Midwest, there were a lot of groups in the 80s, but to narrow it down, I remember ICR, which was Ice Cold Rappers. There was the DFC crew, No Pity Committee, of course Ice Incorporated, Majestic Force. I was in a crew myself called the Curfew Crew, so I gotta give respect and peace out to my homeboys. Shout out to Ice K, he was the best MC in our crew. And then there was another crew that was always on the radio at WHPK for us here in Chicago, and they called themselves the MOC Rappers, Masters of Conception, and that was Top Dog, Double C, and Baby Fresh, and they was dope. Also, there was another group of artists called Empire Destruction, which also later developed into the Ill State Assassins. Yeah, and they were very successful at doing what they were doing. In my opinion, the Ill State Assassins from Chicago was one of the groups of artists that successfully done things independently on a scale independently, and they were dope MCs, all of them. So shout out to the Ill State Assassins. Yeah, and it was a large. They had a large membership too. On the other hand, those were the male artists, but then on the other hand, some of the female artists from Chicago were artists like K-Rock. She was from the West Side. She was dope. We went to high school together. And MC Precious. She was a South Side female MC. And Ange 13. Can't forget Ange 13. She was a North Sider, but she was cold too. So shout out to our homegirls from around the way. Man, I mean, it's so many people to try to name and think of, but trying to narrow it down is a little difficult. Some of the DJs, obviously, from Chicago, that is, we had the Hot Mix 5 back in the 80s. And they were, the hottest thing on the radio at that time. And they were more house DJs, but they also played a mixture of other music. Disco, soul, funk, and of course, house and hip hop. What was developing at the time. There was also a genre of music called electro. So it was a lot of track-based type of music created. So yeah, Hot Mix 5. My homeboy DJ Pac-Man was a dope DJ, still is to this day. And then on WHBK, two of my favorite DJs in the 80s was DJ K Ill and DJ JP Chill. And shout out to all the other DJs at WHBK, but those were two of my favorites during the 80s. Let's see, who else? And then for the graffiti writers, I can't forget the writers because that's what I take to heart the best. I started off as a b-boy, but graffiti took my heart. Out of all the elements, it took my heart the strongest. And so from New York, I liked it. Some of the writers from New York, such as Scene, he was my favorite. Other artists like Dondi and Zephyr and Fatur, Lady Pink. These were some of the artists. Case 2, that was, it had an influence on me, especially when the book Subway Art came out in 1984. But then, flip back to Chicago, some of the artists that we had that was influential on me was a crew called the IAC crew, stood for Insane Artist Crew. Then you had the legendary Feds, Forever Developing Styles, my homeboys, Ice Pack, you know what I'm saying? Peace out to them. And then, Old School Warp, who had a crew called GGC, which was Graffiti Groove Crew. So shout out to the brother Warp, always representing and showing love. And then on the b-boy side, we had in New York, my favorite b-boy crew of all time, and will always be of all time, was the New York City Breakers, and AKA the Floor Masters. They were originally the Floor Masters, and then when they went professionally, where they started traveling, they changed their name to the New York City Breakers. So shout out to the whole crew. One love. And then also Rocksteady. Can't forget Rocksteady, right? Yeah. They appeared in the movie Flashdance. Yeah, One Love. And they always have their Rocksteady reunions in New York. And I got a chance to go to that and, see them represent and enjoy it and have a good time. But then in Chicago, two of the crews, obviously, was my own crew, the Egyptian Breakers. Shout out to my homeboys from 101st. We started dancing in 1982, 83 as a crew. And then I want to also acknowledge another crew from the southeast side of Chicago that went by the name of Awesome. And they were awesome. Hispanic dudes, dope. So, and then as far as the events or just something that happened that I will never forget, especially here in Chicago, was the Fresh Fest, which was the first traveling hip hop tour. And it came from New York, of course, but then when it hit here in Chicago in 1984, 1985, and 1986. I believe I only went to one of them, and I'm not sure which year it was. It had to probably be 85. I think it was around 1985 is the one I went to. But anyhow, they had Run DMC, the Fat Boys, Houdini, Curtis Blow was on the bill. It was, and then at that time, during that time, breakdancing was still very, very new and popular. And it was off the chart. We had it here in Chicago at the UIC Pavilion, I wish I had video footage of that, because that event was so dope. And I'm sure all the others that when they got to their city and they got a chance to experience it for themselves, I'm sure they all had great things to say about it as well. So it was an event that I would never forget in the decade of hip hop. And I believe the one that I went to was in 1985. And then we had a spot here in Chicago for the graffiti artists. It was actually a Bandit Factory over on 93rd, 92nd, and Kimbart. And, we actually made it into a gallery. Part of it was indoors and then part of it was outdoors, but it was all abandoned. So we were able to go in there from time to time and paint, different sections of the walls that was still standing, and have meetings in there and just chill out. It was like a little spot for us that we can call our own. And it was also the home for the Shot Rock Nation. It kicked off around 1984 from my crew, Basive and the Syndicate. So that was our home base at one time for a long time. And obviously, it's not there anymore, to that you can go to it. But, there's a lot of great memories for those that remember it. It definitely is written in our legacy book and in our hearts. And this, a place that I will never forget from the 1980s. So, once again, my name is Artistic, b-boy entrepreneur and historian. Currently, I'm writing a book on the history of Chicago hip-hop called The Real Deal. And I do a live broadcast every week, every Friday night at 8 p.m. And it's called RYC Live. It's the RYC Live show, and we do it every Friday, what we call Fresh Fridays. That's my show, and I highlight hip-hop history. So check us out on YouTube and Facebook. So keep on the lookout. We constantly are archiving, me and my team and fellow other members, fellow other Chicagoans here that's continually trying to preserve the culture. One love to the hip-hop culture universally. Peace out to the hip-hop, the hip-hop museum in New York, the Universal Hip Hop Museum, that will be going up real soon. You can actually go to New York right now and check in with the pop-up section that they have up in the Bronx. But in 2024, they're going to have the official building up and open to the public. So I can't wait. Look forward to that. Also, too, we have a museum here in Chicago, the Chicago Hip Hop Heritage Museum, located over in Bronzeville. So if you're ever in Chicago at any given time and you need something to do, come check us out. Hit us up and make an appointment. So all I got to say is one love, stay easy, and peace.
Hey, my loves, and thank you for tuning in to my first episode of High Connection Presents Moments in Hip Hop. I hope you enjoyed a trip down memory lane here with your girl, Goddess L. Stay tuned for more upcoming episodes with more of my favorite OGs, legends, and up and coming artists here on Moments in Hip Hop. Thank you. See you soon.